The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, Book 5, The Coming of the Bear. 3. When Easter came, I still had no mind to leave Bryn Myrthen. Uther, true to his word, had given me the hill where the cave stood, and people already associated its name with me, rather than with the god, calling it Merlin's Hill. But a message came from the king bidding me to London. This time it was a command, not a request, and so urgent that the king had sent an escort to avoid any delay I might have incurred in waiting for company. It was still not safe in those days to ride abroad in parties smaller than a dozen or more, and one rode armed and warily. Men who could not afford their own escort waited until a party was gathered, and merchants even joined it together to pay guards to ride with them. The wilder parts of the land were still full of refugees from Octa's army, with Irishmen who had been unable to get passage home, and a few stray Saxons trying miserably to disguise their fair skins. The unmercifully hunted down when they failed. These haunted the edges of the farms, skulking in the hills and moors and wild places, making sudden savage forays in search of food, and watching the roads for any solitary or ill-armed traveller, however shabby. Anyone with cloaks or sandals was a rich man and worth despoiling. None of this would have deterred me from riding alone with Cadle from Maradunham to London. No outlaw or thief would have faced a look from me, let alone risked a curse. Since events at Dinas Brennan, Kildare, and Amesbury, my fame had spread, growing in song and story, until I hardly recognized my own deeds. Dinas Brennan had also been renamed. It had become Dinas Emrys, in compliment to me as much as to commemorate Ambrosius's landing and the strong point he had successfully built there. I lived too, as well as I ever had, in my grandfather's palace, or in Ambrosius's house. Offerings of food and wine were left daily below the cave, and the poor, who had nothing else to bring me in return for the medicines I gave them, brought me fuel or straw for the horses' bedding, or their labour for building jobs, or making simple furniture. So winter had passed in comfort and peace, until a sharp day in early March, Uther's messenger, having left the escort in the town, came riding up the valley. It was the first dry day after more than 2 weeks of rain and sleety wind, and I had gone up over the hill above the cave to look for the first growing plants and simples. I paused at the edge of a clump of pines to watch the solitary horseman cantering up the hill. Cadle must have heard the hoofbeats. I saw him, small below me, come out of the cave to greet the men. Then I saw his pointing arm, indicating which way I had gone. The messenger hardly paused. He turned his beast uphill, struck his spurs in, and came after me. He pulled up a few paces away, swung stiffly out of the saddle, made the sign, and approached me. He was a brown-haired young man of about my own age, whose face was vaguely familiar. I thought I must have seen him around Uther's train somewhere. He was splashed with mud to the eyebrows, and where he was not muddy, his face was white with fatigue. He must have got a new horse in Maradunham for the last stage, for the animal was fresh and restive with it. And I saw the young man wince as it threw its head up and dragged at the reins. "My Lord Merlin, I bring you greetings from the king in London." "I am honoured," I said formally. "He requests your presence at the feast of his coronation. He has sent you an escort, my lord. They are in the town resting their horses." "Did you say requests?" "I should have said commands, my lord. He told me I must bring you back immediately." This was all the message? "He told me nothing more, my lord, only that you must attend him immediately in London." "Then of course I shall come tomorrow morning, when you have rested the horses." "Today, my lord, now." It was a pity that Uther's arrogant command was delivered in a slightly apologetic way. I regarded him. "You have come straight to me?" "Yes, my lord." "Without resting?" "Yes." "How long has it taken you?" 4 days, my lord. This is a fresh horse. I am ready to go back today." Here the animal jerked its head again, and I saw him wince. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing to speak of. I took a fall off yesterday and hurt my wrist. It's my right wrist, not my bridle hand." "No, only your dagger hand. Go down to the cave and tell my servant what you have told me, and say he is to give you food and drink. When I come down, I shall see to your wrist." He hesitated. "My lord, the king was urgent. This is more than an invitation to watch the crowning." "You will have to wait while my servant packs my things and saddles our horses. Also, will I myself eat and drink. I can bind up your wrist in a few minutes, and while I am doing it, you can give me the news from London and tell me why the king commands me so urgently to the feast. Go down now. I shall come in a short while." "But, sir," I said, "by the time Cadle has prepared food for the three of us, I shall be with you. You cannot hurry me more than that. Now go." He threw me a doubtful look, then went slithering on foot down the wet hillside and dragging the jibbing horse after him. I gathered my cloak round me again against the wind and walked past the end of the pine wood and out of sight of the cave. I stood at the end of a rocky spur where the winds came freely down the valley and tore at my cloak. Behind me the pines roared, and under the noise the bare blackthorns by Gallipus's grave rattled in the wind. An earthly plover screamed in the grey air. I lifted my face to the sky and thought of Uther and London and the command that had just come. But nothing was there except the sky and the pines and the wind in the blackthorns. I looked the other way, down towards Maradunum. From this height I could see the whole town, tiny as a toy in the distance. The valley was sullen green in the March wind. The river curled grey under the grey sky. A wagon was crossing the bridge. There was a point of colour where a standard flew over the fortress. A boat scudded down river, its brown sails full of the wind. The hills, still in their winter purple, held the valley cupped as one might hold in one's palms a globe of glass. The wind whipped water to my eyes, and the scene blurred. The crystal globe was cold in my hands. I gazed down into it. Small and perfect in the heart of the crystal lay the town with its bridge, and the moving river, and the tiny scudding ship. Around it the fields curved up and over, distorting in the curved crystal, till field, sky, river, clouds held the town with its scurrying people as leaves and sepals hold a bud before it breaks to flower. It seemed that the whole countryside, the whole of Wales, the whole of Britain, could be held small and shining and safe between my hands. Like something set in amber, I stared down at the land globed in crystal, and knew that this was what I had been born for. The time was here. I must take it on trust. The crystal globe melted out of my cupped hands, and was only a fistful of plants I had gathered, cold with rain. I let them fall, and put up the back of a hand to wipe the water from my eyes. The scene below me had changed. The wagon and the boat had gone. The town was still. I went down to the cave to find Cadle busy with his cooking pots, and the young man already struggling with the saddles of our horses. "Let that alone," I told him. "Cadle is their hot water." "Plenty! Here's a start and a half, orders from the king. London, is it?" Cadle sounded pleased, and I didn't blame him. "We were due a change, if you ask me. What is it, do you suppose?" He, jerking his head at the young man, "doesn't seem to know, or else he's not telling. Trouble by the sound of it." "Maybe we'll soon find out. Here, you'd better dry this." I gave him my cloak, sat down by the fire, and called the young man to me. "Let me see that arm of yours now." His wrist was blue with bruising and swollen, and obviously hurt to the touch, but the bones were whole. While he washed, I made a compress, then bound it on. He watched me, half apprehensively, and tended to shy from my touch, but not only, I thought, with pain. Now that the mud was washed off, and I could see him better, the feeling of familiarity persisted even more strongly. I eyed him over the bandages. I know you, don't I? You wouldn't remember me, my lord, but I remember you. You were kind to me once. I laughed. Was it such a rare occasion? What's your name? Ulfin? Ulfin. It has a familiar sound. Wait a moment. I have it. Belasius's boy. Yes, do you remember me? Perfectly, that night in the forest, when my pony went lame, and you had to lead him home. I suppose you were around underfoot most of the time, but you were about as conspicuous as a field mouse. That's the only time I remember. Here's Belasius over here for the coronation. He's dead. Something in his tone made me cock an eye at him over the bandaged wrist. You hated him as much as that? No, don't answer. I guessed as much back there, young as I was. Well, I shan't ask why. The gods know I didn't love him myself, and I wasn't his slave. What happened to him? He died of a fever, my lord. And you managed to survive him? I seem to remember something about an old and barbarous custom. Prince Uther took me into his service. I am with him now, the king. He spoke quickly, looking away. I knew it was all I would ever learn. And are you still afraid of the world, Ulfin? But he would not answer that. I finished tying the wrist. Well, it's a wild and violent place, and the times are cruel, but they will get better, and I think you will help to make them so. There, that's done. Now get yourself something to eat, Cadel. Do you remember Ulfin? The boy who brought Asta home the night we ran into Uther's troops by Nemet? By the dog, so it is. Cadel looked him up and down. You look a sight better than you did then. What happened to the druid? Died of a curse? Come along then and get something to eat. Yours is here, Merlin. And see you eat enough for a human being for a change, and not just what might keep one of your precious birds alive. I'll try, I said meekly, and then laughed at the expression on Ulfin's face as he looked from me to my servant and back again. We lay that night at an inn near the crossroads, where the way leads off north for the 5 hills and the gold mine. I ate alone in my room, served by Cadel. No sooner had the door shut behind the servant who carried the dishes than Cadel turned to me, obviously bursting with news. Well, there's a pretty carry-on in London, by all accounts. One might expect it, I said mildly. I heard someone say Buddock was there, together with most of the kings from across the narrow sea, and that most of them, and half the king's own nobles, have brought their daughters along with an eye to the empty side of the throne. I laughed. That should suit Uther. They say he's been through half the girls in London already, said Cadel, setting a dish down in front of me. It was Welsh mutton with a good sauce made of onions, hot and savoury. They'd say anything of him. I began to help myself. It could even be true. Yes, but seriously, there's trouble afoot, they say. Women trouble. Oh, God, Cadel, spare me. Uther was born to women trouble. No, but I mean it. Some of the escort were talking, and it's no wonder Ulfin wouldn't. This is real trouble. Gorlois's wife. I looked up, startled. The Duchess of Cornwall? This can't be true. It's not true yet, but they say it's not for want of trying. I drank wine. You can be sure it's only rumour. She is more than half as young again as her husband, and I've heard she's fair. I suppose Uther pays her some attention, the Duke being his second in command, and men make all they can of it, Uther being who he is and what he is. Cadel leaned his fists on the table and looked down at me. He was uncommonly solemn. Attention, is it? They say he's never out of her lap. Sends her the best dishes at table each day, sees she's served first even before he is, pledges her in front of everybody in the hall every time he raises his goblet. Nobody's talking of anything else in London from London to Winchester. I'm told they're laying bets in the kitchen. I've no doubt. And does Gorlois have anything to say? Tried to pass it over first, they say, but it got so that he couldn't go on pretending he hadn't noticed. He tried to look as if he thought Uther was just doing the pair of them honour, but when it came to sitting the Lady Igraine, that's her name, on Uther's right, The old man sits down on the other side. He paused. I said uneasily, he must be crazed. He can't afford trouble yet. Trouble of any kind, let alone this. And with Dolores, of all people. By the gods, Cadle, it was Cornwall that helped Ambrosius into the country, after all, and Cornwall who put Uther where he is now, who won the battle of Damon Hill for him. Men are saying that too. Are they indeed? I thought for a moment, frowning. And the woman, what apart from the usual dunghill stuff do they say about her? That she says little, and says less each day. I've no doubt Dolores has plenty to say to her at night, when they're alone together anyway. I'm told she hardly lifts her eyes in public now in case she meets the king staring at her over his cup, or leaning across the table to look down her dress. That's what I call dunghill stuff, Cadle. I meant, what is she like? Well, that's just what they don't say, except that she's silent and as beautiful as this. And the other thing. He straightened. Oh, no one says she gives him any help, and God knows there's no need for Uther to act like a starving man in sight of a dish of food. He could have his platter piled high any night he liked. There's hardly a girl in London who isn't trying to catch that eye of his. I believe you. Has he quarrelled with Dolores? Gorlois? Openly, I mean? Not so that I heard. In fact, he's been over cordial there. And he got away with it for the first week or so. The old man was flattered, but Merlin, it does sound like trouble. She's less than half Gorlois's age, and spends her life mewed up in one of those cold Cornish castles with nothing to do but weave his war cloaks and dream over them. And you may be sure it's not an old man with a grey beard. I pushed the platter aside. I remember I still felt wholly unconcerned about what Uther was doing, but Cadle's last remark came a little too near home for comfort. There had been another girl once, who had had nothing to do but sit at home and weave a dream. I said abruptly, all right, Cadle, I'm glad to know. I just hope we can keep clear of it ourselves. I've seen Uther mad for a woman before, but they've always been women he could get. This is suicide. Crazed, you say? That's what men are saying too, said Cadle slowly. Bewitched, they call it. He looked down at me half sideways. Maybe that's why he sent young Ulfin in such a sweat to make sure you'd come to London. Maybe he wants you there to break the spell? I don't break, I said shortly. I make. He stared for a moment, shutting his mouth on what apparently he had been about to say. Then he turned away to lift the jug of wine. As he poured it for me in silence, I saw that his left hand was making the sign. We spoke no more that night. And that is the end of chapter 3.